sensitive data is more critical than ever before. But what happens when data breaches occur? The Data Breach Register serves as a centralized database where organizations are required to report incidents involving the unauthorized access, disclosure, or loss of personal information. Why organizations need a data breach register? Mandatory reporting. Organizations must promptly notify the Nigeria Data Protection Commission and affected individuals in the event of a data breach. This ensures swift action to mitigate risks and safeguard personal information. Detailed records. The register maintains detailed records of reported breaches, including the nature of the incident, the type of data compromised, and the remedial actions taken by the organization. Compliance and enforcement. Non-compliance with data breach reporting requirements can result in significant penalties and reputation damage for organizations. The register helps enforce regulatory standards and promotes a culture of data protection. Here is a step-by-step guide on how to use the Data Breach Documentation Register. About the organization. Fill the name of the organization. Fill the registration number issued by the Corporate Affairs Commission. Fill the location where the organization is physically situated or conducts its operations. Fill the official email address of the organization. From the list below, pick the most appropriate based on the nature of your core business activity. Data Protection Officer. Fill the name of the designated Data Protection Officer. Fill the email address of the Data Protection Officer. Fill the phone number of the Data Protection Officer. Fill the Data Protection Officer's acquired data protection privacy certifications. Details of data breach. A unique number that indicates where in the register a data breach is reported and documented. A unique identification number or code assigned to each documented data breach. Specify the exact date and time the data breach occurred if known. Specify the exact date and time the data breach was discovered. Provide the number of data subjects affected. If the number is not known, give an approximate number. Description of breach. Explain the process by which a security breach resulted in the unintentional or deliberate loss, alteration, disclosure, or access to personal data. Measures taken or to be taken. Did you inform all individuals affected? Indicate yes or no. List other regulators informed. When did you first notify the NDPC of the data breach? If yes, indicate the date and time. Remedial action. Kindly state the remedial action taken. To place an order, kindly visit dataprotectionacademy.com NG or call 0816 82444.
Failure to submit this report may lead to penalties and regulatory scrutiny. Hi, data controllers and data processors. I'm Daniel Oba, Head, Digital Transformation, Data Protection and Privacy Academy. Are you aware, as part of data protection compliance requirements, organizations are required to submit an internal semi-annual data protection report? Failure to submit this report may lead to penalties and regulatory scrutiny. This report differs from the report prepared by the Data Protection Compliance Organization. This report has to highlight how your organization processes data fairly and lawfully, taking into cognizance purpose limitation, data minimization, data accuracy, storage limitation, integrity of data, and confidentiality of records. Also, in this report, you have to highlight the lawful basis of data processing within your organization, and this could include using consent based on contractual necessity, legal obligation, vital interest, public tax, or legitimate interest. For organizations that have conducted a DPIA, Data Privacy Impact Assessment, within the last 12 months, they are also expected to inform the Nigeria Data Protection Commission of the outcome of the DPIA. As part of Data Protection and Privacy Academy Corporate Social Responsibility, we'll be organizing a free training on YouTube on how data controllers, data processors, and data protection officers can draft this report in a way and manner that meets the requirement of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. For organizations that have conducted a data privacy impact assessment, this will serve as an opportunity to notify the Nigeria Data Protection Commission of the outcome of the DPIA. Follow us on all our social media handles, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified. Our free training will be held on Tuesday, 28th January 2025, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. See you there.
Welcome to the Data Protection Academy training program. In today's digital age, the protection of sensitive information is more crucial than ever before. With the increasing demand for data protection professionals, now is the perfect time to capitalize on the job opportunities in this field. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to the workforce, understanding data protection is essential for anyone working with sensitive information. From healthcare to finance and beyond, throughout the program, you'll dive into real-world case studies, participate in hands-on training sessions, and engage with industry professionals to build a solid foundation in data protection. Data protection is not just a job, it's a mission. Enroll in the Data Protection Academy training program and make a difference in the world of data security.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's session. My name is Daniel Oba, Head Digital Transformation at Data Protection and Privacy Academy, and I'll be your host for today's session. Once again, happy Data Privacy Week. Today's session will focus more on understanding Article 13 of the General Application and Implementation Directive. It is very important to note that the Nigeria Data Protection Commission serves as the regulatory authority for data protection and privacy in Nigeria. And under the mandate and authority of the Commission, the General Application and Implementation Directive was issued, which at the time of this video is still a draft. It's important to emphasize that. However, looking at the article and some of the engagement that the article has. Take, for example, Article 8 talks about the designation of data controllers and data processors, which has been implemented by the Commission. Also, if you look at Article 9, which focuses on registration of data controllers and data processors of major importance, this has also been implemented by the Commission. So in light of this development, it is crucial for data controllers, data processors, and data protection officers to be proactive and understand how to prepare this report, pending when it is now mandatory for every organization through their DPO to submit this report. So with this, let's get today's training started. So now, we are going to look at an extract from Article 13 to really understand what this report is all about. So Article 13 says that a data controller or a data processor shall ensure that a semi-annual data protection report is compiled by its DPO and submitted to its management. In essence, every organization should expect the designated data protection officer to send this report for review prior to submission to the regulatory authorities. The report shall be submitted to an officer of the data controller or data processor who is authorized to receive a record of processing activities. The report shall be acknowledged by the receiving officer and shall form part of the record of processing activities by the data controller or data processor. The report shall be verified by a DPCO during the audit. What this means is that your data protection compliance organization is going to verify this report so that it is a true report of the activities within the organization. So prior to the annual audit, which we are most likely conversant with, this report is an dead assessment. It's also important to note that this is still at the draft stage. But looking at the precedent of Article 8, Article 9 being implemented, of course, Article 13 will also be enforced down the line. So the report to be submitted by the DPO shall, among other, contain the compliance status of the data controller or data processor under the Act, taking into account the principles of data protection as applicable to the processing activities of the data controller or data processor, the lawful basis of the data processing as applicable to the processing activities of the data controller or data processor. Also, the need for DPIA, which is data privacy impact assessment, where applicable. So you also need to look at the legitimate interest assessment if it's applicable for data controllers and processors who dwell on legitimate interest as a lawful basis for processing personal data. So if you look at Article 13, it gives us a glimpse of what the report should look like. However, this training will go into the practicality of drafting this report. So with that being said, let's go into the report itself. Okay, so we have a draft. This report is semi-annual. So what that means is that it will be prepared twice a year. So take for example, between June to December should be roughly 6 months. So you have your logo here. You have to put your logo on the report. You also have to have the title of the report, which is the internal semi-annual data protection compliance report. You also have the organization name. So here you insert your company's name. Now, the DPO who is preparing this has to put his or her name here as evidence this was done by that designated individual. So the reporting period, so I'm just assuming that between June to December is like half of the year. So I'm preparing my report between June and December to send it in January 2025. This is just an assumption. So I'm also going to insert the final date of this report. That is when management has reviewed this report and is okay with the report. Then I can insert a date, right? That's the final review date. Now, this report will contain some table of content just to give readers an idea of the content of this report. Basically, this list is not exhaustive. You can add to it, you can take some out that are not applicable. This is just a training manual. So now, the table of content should include things like an introduction, principles of data protection, the lawful basis of data processing, the DPIA that has been conducted, if that has been done. If that has not been done, just take it out or indicate that we are here to carry out a DPIA. Then for organizations that dwell on legitimate interest to process personal data, you also need to show evidence that you've carried out an assessment and there will be no privacy violation or misuse of the data. Next, you also need to look at how data subject can exercise their right. Most likely you have a data subject access request procedure being implemented, and some of these data subject access request forms have been issued to relevant department within your organization. So you need to state this clearly so that the commission can look at, oh, this organization is really making headway in terms of ensuring privacy and protecting customers' records. Next, you need to look at the data subject complaints you've received within that period. Just as I said earlier, it's a 6 month report. So within 6 months, did you receive any complaint of privacy violation? So you need to put it in this part of the report. And if there are remediation that you've taken within that period in regards to the data subject complaint, you also indicated there. Then, if within this period the NDPC, which is the statutory authority, issues any notice, you also need to put it here and also explain how you have taken action in regards to that notice that has been issued. Then, if your DPCO, which is your external consultant, if they have guided you in any way, maybe they helped you review the privacy policy which you drafted maybe a year ago, maybe they helped you in carrying out your third party audit. So any kind of external guidance your DPCO gave you within this period, you also indicate it. That is also a way of saying if the DPCO is really carrying out those consulting services as it should be, you understand. So you also need to assess your data security. You also need to put up a little draft of the privacy notice information you have within your ecosystem. And if you transfer data outside Nigeria, you also need to explain the legal grounds for carrying out that data processing activity. Then this is something people don't really want to hear. If you experience any data breach within that period, you also need to notify the commission. So if you've notified them, maybe when the breach was still very, very recent and you sent in the necessary documentations and they followed up with you, yes, but doing the semi-annual report, you also need to emphasize that, okay, we experienced this data breach and these are what we've done so far. So this is just like a guide. And the list is not exhaustive. You can improve on it. You can take away some that may not resonate with your industry or your business environment. Take, for example, the cross-border data transfer may not resonate with everybody. The DPIA may not also be something everyone has done, you understand. And legitimate interest may not be applicable to every organization, you understand. So it's not as if your report must have all this, you understand. It's just a guide. So let's look at introduction. What should be in the introduction? Now, this report provides an overview of the compliance status of the organization in terms of the act. So this part of it now is giving the NDPC the opportunity to understand what does the organization do. You understand? So it's very important you understand this. So, under the introduction part, you give an overview of the compliance status of your organization with the Act, discussing in brief some areas you have taken action, especially with management support, just like an introduction. So we'll move over to the principles because the principles is very important. You need to look at how does your organization process data fairly and lawfully? What are those controls you've put? What are those actions you've taken to ensure that there is fairness and lawfulness when processing personal data? Also, you need to look at purpose limitation. Does your organization stick with the initial purpose of data processing or later deviate and maybe use it for marketing? So you have to describe how data is collected and how you ensure that the use does not change over time. Also, you also need to let the commission understand that you have implemented some form of data minimization. Probably you've reviewed your account opening form for those that will be applicable to, or your sign up form, so that some fields that may not be needed are taken out, because sometimes we have some of all these are onboarding form that collect more than necessary, you understand, data about people. So what do? You review your forms, reduce some of those data that may not be relevant, you understand. You can even use technology to do this. Take, for example, you could have an API being shared with NIMC that allows you to carry out customer onboarding. In that regard, maybe you just need the name of the user. You don't need to ask them to fill forms and every other documentation, at least for the entry level. Maybe when you want to start doing background check, you may ask for those information, but minimization can be implemented by reducing the number of data you request from data subject. Also, you need to show the commission through this report how you ensure data accuracy. You understand? A simple way is take, for example, your organization is in charge of carrying out verification exercise. So one way you can do this accuracy is to make sure that the data subject is given opportunity to preview the data before it is saved. That doesn't need any technology to do, though you could even use AI to be able to remove some of these fields that are inaccurate and are inconsistent with the data set. But using that method is very elementary. Let the user be able to preview before you save the document finally. That is a way of ensuring accuracy, you understand. Then you also need to explain storage limitation. You need to also explain storage limitation. What is your data retention policy? How long do you keep data? At what point do you archive this data? So these are things you need to explain to the commission. And the beauty about this report is coming from someone within the system, because most likely you would have appointed a DPO from within, though you could also have an external DPO. But we're assuming the DPO is from within, so the DPO understands the organization, right? Because if the DPO is from outside, then this report is also prepared by an external individual, right? This report is supposed to be done by someone within the system to verify if the external reports also make sense. Then we talk about the integrity and confidentiality of data. Here you need to also show some of the technical measures you implement to ensure that customer records, employee records will not be what altered and will not be accessed by people who don't need to know. So going through this report will guide the organization on the technology to adopt, the technology to phase out, and the trainings to ensure their employees go through within the period under review. So you can drop questions on the chat box. I'll try my best to answer as much as I can within the time frame. Don't forget this training will last for 60 minutes, and after which the recording will also be online for those who are unable to attend the live session. So we move over to the lawful basis of data processing. As you are aware, one of the ways to process data is consent, right? So for organizations that dwell on consent, you need to also explain to the commission if you have a consent form, if you also have a consent withdrawal form, and how you're implementing it. Also, if you dwell on contractual necessity, you explain how you ensure that this is fulfilled and how this will not infringe on people's privacy. You understand? Also, if you dwell on legal obligation, which every organization at some point will process data under this circumstance, you also need to explain to the commission. Then for medical institutions, vital interest will be more applicable to you because these dwell more during emergency. Maybe there's an operation, they have made effort to reach the next of kin, it's really not speaking or she's not picking, then the a medical practitioner cannot administer medication just to save the person's life. So this will be more applicable to the healthcare sector. And I am very sure they would have used this as a way of processing data within their environment. So you need to say, okay, over a period of 6 months, we used vital interest for maybe 15 patients, after which the patient recovered and proper explanation and documentation was carried out, just to give an overview of how you've used vital interest to process data. Then public interest or public task. Okay, for organizations that dwell on this, you can also explain how you make use of this as a form of processing data. Then for people who dwell on legitimate interests, now you have to also show evidence of a legitimate assessment carried out to show that yes, people whose data have been processed under these circumstances will not have their privacy infringed. Then for the DPIA, which is more of a technical procedure to look at the risk within a particular system. So first of all, you need to identify the need for a DPIA. You don't just carry out a DPIA. So you have to show the commission that yes, you carried out a need assessment and you discover that yes, your institution needs to carry out a DPIA. Also, the DPIA you conducted, you can give a brief summary because you could attach the DPIA report as an appendix, or just give a summary of the DPIA conducted. Maybe we conducted 5 DPIA, one on our website, one on our core banking, and these are the findings. Do you understand? Then the risk that you identified and most likely the remediation that should be carried out, and the ones you've implemented, the ones that are pending, you understand. So you give a brief of it. Then for the legitimate interest assessment, for that's this will not be applicable to everybody. It's for those who want to process data based on legitimate interest. So you have to show that you did a legitimate interest assessment. You understand? So you give a summary and try to balance it, give justification, right? Uh-huh. Then for the data subject, they have powers to report to the commission when there's any privacy breach or privacy violation. So you also need to show that yes, you understand the rights of data subject. Take, for example, the right to access their data, the right to rectify their data, the right to erase their data, the right to restrict processing, the right to port their data. So there are trainings we've done that explains this extensively. So if you really want to learn more, you could follow some of the videos on our YouTube page, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page to get notified when we have trainings like this. So we move over to the complaints. Now, if you've received any complaint as regard data privacy and data protection, you also need to discuss it here, looking at the number of complaints and actions you've taken. Then if there's any notice the commission issued within that time frame, you also need to list the notice and how you've taken action on it. Then for the external consultant, that's the data protection compliance organization, you also need to identify those areas they've been of assistance to your organization, you understand, and actions that have been taken in that regard. Then for the data security, you have to look at what are the security measures we have implemented as an institution, the technical measures, the organizational measures. So these technical measures may be network security, vulnerability and penetration testing. The organizational measures may be reviewing your policies or carrying out training for your third parties. Whatever measures you've taken, you need to identify and give a description and explain in a way that the commission will understand what you've done. Then, if you've done audits, which most likely you've done, you also need to give a summary of the audit, the risk identified, those areas that are supposed to be remediated, the gap analysis, you understand. Then, if you have any incidents that you've identified that period, like security incident, you need to also identify it, you understand. Then, for people who have taken time to have privacy notice, this is also a time to inform the commission of your privacy notice, you understand, telling them how people can have access to it or how people are already having access to it. Because you may have a privacy notice, but you've not issued it out publicly because management is here to approve. So you also give an idea of the updates and revisions done within that period. Then you also have to understand that some organizations may also need to share data abroad. In that regard, you could have your standard contractual clauses, your binding corporate rules attached as an appendix, right? But also notify the commission in this regard. Then if you have any data transfer agreement with companies outside Nigeria or government institutions outside Nigeria, this is where you identify it. So as a DPO, you now have something to get your hands on, right? You have to understand that this is a responsibility because the ecosystem will only grow when the DPOs take action because you are the watchdog within your environment. The regulatory body is the NDPC, but it can't be everywhere at every time, right? But you as the DPO, you should champion data privacy, you should champion in-house training, you should also champion management having privacy champions to support you. Because looking at this report, you can't just sit in your office and do it. You will need the head of legal in your organization to support you in some regards. You also need the IT head also to delegate his staff to work with you. So you can't just sit in your office and say, okay, this is the report, I'm going to draft it. No, some of these data sets you need to generate this report, you may need to consult other departments and units. You also need to look at the compliance unit. Okay, what can they bring to the table? So it's a report that should not be drafted just by the DPO because it's a DPO report, but management have to look at it critically and say, okay, what departments within our system play critical role in data collection? So you get people from those departments to support the DPO to make sure that this report reflects the outcome of the what organization needs. So now you talk about the data breach. Data breach is inevitable. Big organizations, small organizations will experience data breach. And it's not bad to experience a data breach. What is bad is that you don't learn anything from it. Because data breach, sometimes we don't have control over it. Maybe you dwell on third parties to process data. They experience a data breach. It's not your fault, it's your third party's fault. But you just have to understand that it will happen. So what do? You have to make sure that you also audit your third parties, right? To make sure that they put in place those security measures that you yourself as the data controller is also implementing. So data protection is a whole lot, you understand? So if you've experienced a data breach, you also need to give a summary of the data breach, the ones you've reported to the commission and the ones you've not reported to the commission, because it's not every data breach you should report to the NDPC. You understand? So you need to notify the NDPC when this breach will pose high risk. But if it's a breach that you know that within your system is not going to pose any high risk, it's something you can resolve internally, then you can take care of it. And don't forget the threshold is 72 hours to report data breach to the commission. You don't need to wait till the 72 hours reach. You can report immediately you discover it, as long as you have some pockets of information. There are trainings that we'll be having in the coming weeks that will talk about data breach management, because it's a very interesting topic. As an institution, you should be very conversant with data breach management. Who should be part of the data breach response team? How do you document this data breach? If you've watched some of our videos, we have the data breach documentation register, which is very innovative. Any DPO, whether you're in the remote area or you're in the urban area, the data breach documentation register can serve as a manual for you to document data breach. So take advantage of this opportunity. So under the appendix, you could have your incident report, you could have your DPIA report, you could have your legitimate interest assessment report, you could have your privacy notice samples, and you could also have your security audit report. So this is just like a guide on how to draft these reports. So if you have any question, you can drop it while we take a little break before we continue.
In today's digital age, protecting sensitive data is more critical than ever before. But what happens when data breaches occur? The Data Breach Register serves as a centralized database where organizations are required to report incidents involving the unauthorized access, disclosure, or loss of personal information. Why organizations need a data breach register? Mandatory reporting. Organizations must promptly notify the Nigeria Data Protection Commission and affected individuals in the event of a data breach. This ensures swift action to mitigate risks and safeguard personal information. Detailed records. The register maintains detailed records of reported breaches, including the nature of the incident, the type of data compromised, and the remedial actions taken by the organization. Compliance and enforcement. Non-compliance with data breach reporting requirements can result in significant penalties and reputation damage for organizations. The register helps enforce regulatory standards and promotes a culture of data protection. Here is a step-by-step guide on how to use the Data Breach Documentation Register. About the organization. Fill the name of the organization. Fill the registration number issued by the Corporate Affairs Commission. Fill the location where the organization is physically situated or conducts its operations. Fill the official email address of the organization. From the list below, pick the most appropriate based on the nature of your core business activity. Data Protection Officer. Fill the name of the designated Data Protection Officer. Fill the email address of the Data Protection Officer. Fill the phone number of the Data Protection Officer. Fill the Data Protection Officer's acquired data protection privacy certifications. Details of data breach. A unique number that indicates where in the register a data breach is reported and documented. A unique identification number or code assigned to each documented data breach. Specify the exact date and time the data breach occurred if known. Specify the exact date and time the data breach was discovered. Provide the number of data subjects affected. If the number is not known, give an approximate number. Description of breach. Explain the process by which a security breach resulted in the unintentional or deliberate loss, alteration, disclosure, or access to personal data. Measures taken or to be taken. Did you inform all individuals affected? Indicate yes or no. List other regulators informed. When did you first notify the NDPC of the data breach? If yes, indicate the date and time. Remedial action. Kindly state the remedial action taken. To place an order, kindly visit dataprotectionacademy.com NG or call 0816 82444.
So we are back from the break, and I believe we've been able to understand what this report is all about and how to go about it. Now, if you want to maximize the training experience you've had today, it will be good for you to have access to this template. And how would that be? So, we are giving you an offer. If you want us to guide you, be your mentor on how to draft this report, fine and good. We're going to support you all the way by providing you with access to the employee privacy awareness training, which will commence on the 28th of February. And that will also follow through with an expert report review. So we'll help you review the report you are going to draft. You understand? And also you will get a digital certificate. This digital certificate will show evidence that you understand how to draft this report, and you could also guide not just your organization, but support other institutions that you know to be able to prepare this report. So to get this template, you have three payment options. You can either pay through the Pay Stack link, which is displayed on the screen. So you go to paystack.com/pay/DPO report. So that will give you access to this template. And don't forget, we are going to support you as mentors to make sure that when you have your own draft, it is reviewed by our professional in-house team. And not just that, you will get a digital certificate attending this live training. And also, you will have access to the General Employee Privacy Awareness Training, which will commence February 28th. So that will form a unique experience. So you can be an expert when you talk about drafting the DPO internal semi-annual reports. Not just that, you also learn other things about data breach. You also learn about managing consent. You also learn about marketing without violating privacy rules. So these are things you tend to benefit. So you can either pay through Paystack or you pay through our Polaris Bank account, which is displayed on the screen, or you can also pay through GT Bank, which is also displayed on the screen. So either Polaris or GT Bank, or you use Paystack. So what this will cost you is just 100,000 naira. It's not much. You understand? Knowledge is something that you can't quantify the value. So having a mentor from the Data Protection Academy will not just be a learning path, but also explode your potential in the data protection and privacy ecosystem. Our contacts are displayed on the screen, so you can follow us. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel to get notified when we have trainings like this, because we have trainings that are very educative and enlightening. You would not see some of these trainings anywhere else, just Data Protection and Privacy Academy. So follow us on social media, follow us on every social media platform you are on to get notified when we have trainings like this. And you can also follow us through WhatsApp. That number is on WhatsApp. So for everyone who has made out time to be part of this training, I appreciate you. And I believe this training has helped you to understand how to implement Article 13 of the General Application and Implementation Directive. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.